Welcome to the Tenant Screening Podcast, a training course for landlords to understand how to effectively find great renters. Sponsored by VeteranLandlord.com. And now your host, Edward O'Daniel.
Hello, landlords, and welcome to the Tenant Screening Podcast. I'm your host, Edward O'Daniel, and welcome to our next episode regarding fair housing. If you listened to on our last episode here, we kind of covered some of the reasons people should be listening to this podcast and who should be and shouldn't be listening. So if you didn't get that, please go back and listen to the previous podcast. But this episode, we're really going to be diving into fair housing. Now, this is not an entirely sexy type topic, but if you're a landlord, it's absolutely 100% something that you need to know, need to understand, and need to make sure you do not violate. Fair housing is a federal law that the Housing and Urban Development has put in place to prevent people from discriminating against certain types of people when it comes to housing. So right now, I know in the very beginning, it's easy to put some innocent things like in your marketing descriptions, or to say the wrong thing when you're on the phone maybe, or when you're in person showing a unit. You want to make sure you don't do that. So first off, I want to make sure that this fair housing podcast here is not going to be all inclusive. I would have to highly recommend that if you're going to be doing your own tenant screening, that you find a fair housing class that you can take online, or even something in your local market through maybe one of the apartment associations or one of the real estate investment groups that have fair housing classes that are available. Typically, it's going to cost you $100 to $200 to go take the class. It will be well worth it, and it's even well worth it to take the class at least every 3 or so years, just to make sure that you stay up on it. But fair housing is something that can get you into trouble if you don't know what's going on with it. Now, excuse me, right now, I wanted to make sure that I read this directly from the HUD's website regarding fair housing. It is illegal to discriminate in the sale or rental of housing, including against individuals seeking a mortgage or housing assistance, or in other housing-related activities. The Fair Housing Act prohibits this discrimination because of race, color, national origin, religion, sex, familial status, and disability. A variety of other federal civil rights laws, including Title VI of the Civil Rights Act, Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act, and the Americans with Disabilities Act, prohibit discrimination in housing and community development programs and activities, particularly those that are assisted with HUD funding. These civil rights laws include obligations such as taking reasonable steps to ensure meaningful access to their programs and activities for persons with limited English proficiency, and taking the appropriate steps to ensure effective communications with individuals with disabilities through the provisions of the appropriate auxiliary aids and services. Various federal, housing, and civil rights laws require HUD and its program participants to affirmatively further the purpose of the Fair Housing Act. So this is sort of the verbiage right off the bat, and I've actually put in. I'm going off of the Tenant Screening Handbook. If you listen to our last episode, this is a free ebook that I offer on the VeteranLandlord.com website. But I'm reading from this, and I have several other links in the ebook that take you right out to a fair housing video if you want to watch it. That's out on YouTube, and also has some other resources that you can go to the HUD website as well. But one of the basic things that I want to make sure that you get from this podcast episode is that you have to treat everybody exactly the same throughout your process. That is the main part of the Fair Housing Act. You cannot discriminate. And when it says discriminate, that means I'll give you some things that I've run across in the classes that I've taken that people have told me, and I'm like, really? That's considered discrimination? And it is. So I'll tell you that in just a minute. It has to deal with your marketing when you start marketing your properties. But everybody that applies, you have to apply the same policies, procedures, and standards to everyone, no matter who they are. So let me kind of get into some of the marketing things that kind of blew my mind when I took some classes, and I'm like, really? That could be considered fair housing violations? So whenever you market to people, you need to make sure that you try to keep all of the protected classes. Now, when we went over this, race, color, national origin, all of these things that we went over are what they call protected classes, meaning you cannot directly discriminate against this. So you can't give any race, discriminate saying none of this race or none of these color people can live here. I mean, obviously that's pretty blatant, but you can't put that in your marketing. But you, even when you're putting stuff in the marketing, here's the thing that blew my mind when I took a class. They said that they were giving directions inside of the online ad, and they actually said when they got to the corner, it says, when you get to this corner, you'll see a Catholic church. At the Catholic church, make a left and go this way. And that right there is enough to sort of not, I mean, it's kind of vague, but because you put a specific religion in there, you're almost like pushing people who are Catholic, like your home or this property is near Catholic church, so you want Catholic people. So even something as small as that you put in your marketing can really be classified as discrimination. So do not put anything about age, like younger community or older community, any things like that you put in your marketing could be used as discrimination. So one of the things that we're going to talk about on a future podcast is how to build your qualifications. Now, those are going to be the things that you're actually going to be using to protect yourself, because those are going to be sort of your policies. But here, when we're talking about fair housing, you need to make sure that you just understand that you have to take everybody and treat them the same. Okay. If you don't, you can be sued through people can file a complaint with you against Housing and Urban Development. People can write you up, and even though you're not, you own property, you could still be held liable for this. So right now, that's the big thing that I want to get across in this episode. Just fair housing. Please protect yourself. Treat everybody the same. Know the protected classes. Go take an online training course for fair housing so that you can make sure that you're protecting yourself and you treat everybody the same, and your life is going to be so much easier. Guys, thanks for listening to this episode. Please stay tuned for future episodes, and thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Tenant Screening Podcast. To get your free copy of the Tenant Screening Handbook, visit us at veteranlandlord.com and create your free account. If you find this material valuable, we'd appreciate it if you can share this podcast with others and leave us a great review.